Welcome to the Newsight PPTK 2.1 video tutorial on the 2 to 8 warper. This tutorial will show you two ways of using the 2 to 8 warper. The first way is with Open EXR files with included 32-bit depth information. The second way, which is new to PPTK 2.1, is using the 2 to 8 warper with 8-bit depth maps. This is useful if your 3D program cannot create Open EXR files. Both ways allow you to change the 3D impression of your composition in post-production without you having to re-render from your 3D program. For this tutorial, we will be using 3D Studio Max. I'll switch to that now. I've already set up my scene in 3D Studio Max, so it's pretty much been completed. For this tutorial, I'm just going to show the render setup of the Open EXR and 8-bit files. For more in-depth information on how to complete the entire scene, go to the Help menu in PPTK, Manual, and read the tutorials for both production and post-production in either 3D Studio Max, Maya, or Lightwave for the 2 to 8 warper. So as you can see in the scene, I have 3 cameras and an object at which the cameras are pointing. I also have an animation that's 160 frames long and a particle system. The camera in the center, called Cam Middle, controls the camera on the right and the camera on the left. And I've built in a slider that changes the disparity between the camera on the right and left. I'm going to keep this at value of 5. And for this tutorial, we won't be using camera middle at all. We'll just be using cam right and cam left to create the Open EXR images and the 8-bit depth maps. So now I'm going to create the Open EXR image sequences for the left and right cameras. Go to Rendering, Batch Render, click Add Twice for the 2 cameras, rename View 1 to View Left, and View 2 to View Right. Go back to View Left, specify the camera as Cam Left, output path, I'll create a new folder, call this Cam Left. Click into the folder, file name, Cam Left. Save as type. Very important that we choose Open EXR image file. Click Save. Float 32 bits per channel for the format. Extra channels and attributes. And I'll add a Z buffer. And I'll change this to a 32-bit float. Click OK. And now I'll do the same thing for the right side. But for camera, I'll choose Cam Right. Output path, I'll make a new folder and call this Cam Right. Click into the folder, Cam Right, save as type, Open EXR image file. Everything here looks good. Click OK. And now we're almost ready to render. Just going to check that in my render dialog I have active time segment selected because I want to render out the entire animation. Close this out, and now all we have to do is click Render Here. Now this will take a few minutes, so I'm going to stop the tutorial and render out the files, and we'll pick up back in PPTK. Now in PPTK, I will create 2 Open EXR image import filters. Right-click, add filter, input, Open EXR image import. Rename this filter Cam Left. Click Load, and I will find my Cam Left image sequence that I just created from 3D Studio Max. As you can see, I have a color channel and a 32-bit depth channel. I will do the same thing for Cam Right. Rename this Cam Right. Go to Load and find my Cam Right image sequence. Now I will create a 2 to 8 warper. Connect Cam Left to the top input slot of the 2 to 8 warper and Cam Right to the bottom input slot. Make sure that Z data and 32-bit float are selected. As you can see when I move the view slider, the 2 to 8 warper has created 8 different views from the original 2 Open EXR inputs. From here, we can play with the 3D impression strength simply by adjusting the 3D volume and zero plane accordingly. You will need a Newsight 3D display to see exactly how the 3D impression changes, so unfortunately that cannot be shown on this tutorial. The good part, however, is that we can simply adjust the 3D values without having to re-render from 3D Studio Max. In addition to the color information, the alpha channel is also warped. This means that you can now add in a different background with an overlay filter and further adjust your footage independently from everything else in the scene. Now I will demonstrate how you can use 8-bit depth maps with the 2 to 8 warper if you do not have the capability to render Open EXR images from your 3D program. First, we will go back into 3D Studio Max to quickly create the 8-bit images. Even though 3D Studio Max does have Open EXR capability, there are a few important points I'll cover that should be valid for other 3D applications. So what I'm doing right now is I'm using Z-depth in render elements to create the 8-bit depth maps. And I'm going to make an output for cam left. I'll make a new folder, and this is where I want the 8-bit depth maps for cam left to be saved when I render. All this depth left, and I'll save as a targa so that I have an alpha channel. Regardless of which 3D program you use, it is always important that the Z-min value in your Z-depth tool is at 0. To figure out the Z-max value, simply select either your right or left camera and move the target distance to just beyond where your scene or object ends. In this scene, the distance between the cameras and the target object changes, so to figure out the Z-max, I'll scrub forward in the timeline until the cameras are at their farthest point from the target object. Then I'll measure the target distance. I'll take the target distance and input that into Z-max. Now I'm ready to render for cam left. I will make an output directory and save as a targa. Now I can render the 8-bit files with the color information. Once this has completed rendering for cam left, I will do the same for cam right. This will take a few minutes to render, so I'll stop the tutorial and we'll pick up back in PPTK. Now back in PPTK, I've created 4 image video import filters. 2 are for the left and right color sequences, and 2 are for the left and right 8-bit depth map sequences. I've also created 2 view multiplexers that combine each pair of streams together. Now, all we have to do is add a 2 to 8 warper. Because we are using 8-bit depth maps, it is very important to make sure that the Z-data and 8-bit integer radial buttons are selected. As you can see, 8 images have been created from these files. We are now free to adjust the 3D volume and focal planes to finely tune the 3D impression. I have also rendered with an alpha channel, so this means I could add in a background or anything else into the scene as a layer with the Overlay 3D filter. This concludes the Newsight PPTK 2.1 video tutorial on the 2 to 8 warper. For additional video tutorials, check under the support section at newsight.com.